Hi, it's D Riley here, and I'm very warm welcome to another edition of People and Politics. I say this at the start of every single show, and I'm going to say it again. If you've not already done so, please subscribe to my show. I'd be very grateful indeed, because as you probably know, the more subscribers I get, the more I can carry on and get more and more guests and continue to do this podcast, which I really enjoy doing it. I'm very grateful to all the writers, the commentators, the politicians who give up their time to do this show. So if you wouldn't mind subscribing, I'd be very grateful. I was joined earlier today by Kirsty Blackman MP. Kirsty has represented Aberdeen North since 2015, but her political career started before that when she was elected to Aberdeen City Council at the tender age of 21 to represent her area then. So I was really grateful to hear Kirsty's story and talk about some of the issues of the day with her. So, without further ado, welcome to People and Politics. Kirsty, thank you very much for coming on the show and doing this. I was saying, I just really love it. I really love talking to politicians like yourself and just taking a lot of time, and it's great.
I love having a yap, and I'm always willing to talk about politics or democracy. Sorry if the printer's making a noise in the background, it'll stop in a minute.
And that's no problem. No, I can hear. I should have said there's people in the flat upstairs, and that they're having a new bathroom put in. And
Okay.
this time yesterday it was like a dentist drill. Yeah, it was just so. But hopefully we'll get away. We'll get away with it. So
Well, I can hear you loud and clear, so I think we'll be okay.
good stuff. Good stuff. So I was having a look at your background, and I didn't realize you went into politics pretty early because you were elected to Aberdeen Council when you were 21. That's pretty early.
It is.
That's almost on a par with Mary Black. I don't know which one of you was younger, but so you must have decided quite early on that you were going to go into politics.
Not at all. So I decided quite early on that I was interested in politics, and I joined the SNP in about 2001. But in 2001, nobody joined the SNP for a job because we didn't get anybody elected,
Yeah,
you know.
yeah.
So, it certainly wasn't my plan to end up being a councillor and then to end up being an MP. That was not in the game plan. It was just, so what happened in 2007 is there was a reorganisation in local government in Scotland, and you ended up in a situation where a lot of councillors took a golden handshake to leave at that point, and you moved from a system of first past the post to a system of multi-member wards. So it just happened that I was kind of in the right time at the right place when we ended up getting a lot of people elected in 2007. And do you know what? I wasn't the youngest councillor in Scotland. I was the second youngest because my little brother got elected.
Oh, yeah. Was he elected at the same time?
He was elected at the same time and he was 18.
18 years old, city
Yep.
council, that's pretty young. That's definitely a career politician.
Well, he retired in 2012. So he stepped out of politics at that point.
Yeah,
But the really good thing is, in 2012, we'd had four under 30s elected in 2007. And in 2012, all of the parties stood young people. So we'd sort of smashed that glass ceiling, that was it gone. It was really,
Yeah.
really good to make that change.
Yeah, that's interesting because it was, I suppose traditionally politics would have been associated more with, older, retired, well, not retired, but there was a lot of lawyers who'd worked in law for 30 years and then getting into politics. They used to, particularly in the Labour Party in Scotland at the time, there was so many lawyers that stood for Labour. So, yeah, it's good to get younger people.
Yeah, you're totally right. And actually they changed the way that councillors were paid at that point as well. So you went from getting about 3 grand a year plus expenses to about 15, 16 grand a year. So they kind of professionalized it and made it so actually it was a viable job to do. You didn't have to be a retired person with money behind you who'd paid off your mortgage or, who had kind of low housing costs in order to be able to get that. And I think, I'm certainly not saying that everybody in politics should be younger, but I think we need that spread because you're trying to represent everybody. And if you're entirely 60-year-old white men, then it's very difficult for you to have that kind of breadth of experience and understanding. So the 43 councillors in Aberdeen, I'd like to see a kind of that good mix, younger folk,
Yeah.
older folk, and everything in between.
So I think you said that you got into by accident. So if you hadn't gone into politics, do you know what you would have done, or what you wanted to do, or what you
So
had done?
I left school in 2004 and I had two plans. I wanted to have kids and I wanted to help people. And that was my plans for life. Yeah.
That's pretty
And so,
good.
so I actually went to university to do medicine. So
Oh,
to
that's
train as a doctor.
right. Yeah.
Yeah, and I had a really terrible time with my mental health. And Aberdeen University at that stage was a very traditional medical course. And the first year of medicine, you basically didn't meet a live human being, other than your
Oh,
classmates. And I thought I just knew that I couldn't do 5 years of it without having a breakdown.
yeah.
So I decided that the medicine course was not for me, and to step back from that. So that was kind of my initial thought was to become a doctor. But as I say, it wasn't for me. I really struggled with depression that year, and sort of took a step back and thought, well, what am I going to do with myself? And then ended up getting elected to the council.
Uh, I said, uh, I hope that didn't have a detrimental, an even more detrimental effect on your mental health. I wonder, I must have a close call, because I'm sure you have a lot of stress and shit there. And but there's a little gone home because I was desperate to be a medic, but I wasn't quite brave enough. And I think it's really terrific to have people like yourself who've experienced mental health in Parliament and public office, because in Parliament, because mental health back at that time was still stigmatised and still a bit put but now they've made a lot of strides forward, which is really great.
And one of the most important things with mental health issues, with depression, is that you need to talk about it. And if people are, if there's that stigma there, which, I mean, there still is a stigma, but if that stigma is there, it's even more difficult for people to recognize that they're having an issue, and to be able to talk about it. And I'm still not brilliant at it. I still sometimes have times where things are going up and down, and I kind of struggle to realize that I'm on a downward spiral sometimes. And, as you grow older, as you've been through these kind of cycles a bit more often, you get better at recognizing the signs. But I think talking about it is so important. And that's one of the reasons that I'm keen to say to people, loads of people have got poor mental health at various points. And the most important thing is to seek help, to speak to people about it.
Yeah, I think that's very terrific, and actually, this is something that I've not shared on my podcast before. It's not. I've had very acute mental health, issues through my, and it started at university for me. So I was at Manchester Medical School, but I wasn't studying to do medicine. I was doing my postgraduate work,
Okay.
and I just got really ill at that time. So. And that was back in, and you know, can I whisper? It was
Yeah.
1995.
I'm sure you said 2005. That's
Yeah,
definitely what you
yeah,
said there. Yeah.
yeah, that's right. And yeah, so ever since then I've been, and as I say, you just learn to manage it. It doesn't go away, but you learn to manage it and learn to recognize the signs. And I think it's really terrific. There's a lot of great progress
Yeah.
in mental health as the been progress in a lot of fields, and one of the things I wanted to come on to is I noticed that women equalities and did it as part of your brief at
Yes.
Westminster. And I wondered um, how you felt that was going recently, because you know, there's no sense for me and a lot of people that equality is almost going backwards at the moment. And I wondered how you felt about that and what were some of the triggers that you thought driving that.
So it's not a brief I've done before. So I'm also DWP just now, and I've done DWP before. So I've kind of got a bit of a grounding in that. Women inequalities is a new one for me to be the lead on. So I think that's both really interesting and really exciting. But I think you're right. We're seeing some problems. We're seeing things going backwards in a way that we haven't seen probably in my lifetime, actually. You know, we've always seen steps towards equality
Yeah.
in the last 20 or 30 years, but it feels like, whether the law has changed in a negative way or not, it certainly feels like we're seeing an increase in the amount of abuse that people are getting, an increase in the number of hate crimes, an increase in that kind of feeling that if you don't fit in that white male 60-year-old box,
Yeah.
that you can't, that you can't achieve. And so I think it's a really important time for me to take on the role, but I'm not underestimating the amount of challenges that there are. So both with or with women's equality, I think I was at an event yesterday, and they were taking a picture of all of the people that were in charge. Right, so there was 7 people lined up. Every single one of them was a white middle class man in their
Wow.
50s or 60s, and I just thought this is not where we want to be.
No.
Um, and too many organisations are not recognising that. And then again, in terms of women's equality, you're seeing a rise amongst young people of that kind of Andrew Tate stuff, so that real feeling that women should stay in their box, should uh, be owned by their man, and actually that's really really concerning from young people. So I'm worried about that. And then, in terms of other inequality things, we're seeing a massive increase again in the amount of hate crimes towards trans people, which is hugely concerning. People are very worried for their safety. And there's a bit of an impact as well on lesbian and gay people who are also struggling with some of the hate crimes. And
Mm.
then in terms of disability inequality, we're not seeing any of the steps forward that I would like to see. I would like to see, also spoken positively, I think, about the reduction in the stigma that there is around mental health. We still don't have enough understanding from employers, particularly about either mental or physical disabilities or health issues. And I would again like to see that, workplaces particularly becoming better and having a better understanding. And then lastly on that, the changes that subsequent UK governments are looking to make to disability benefits, for example, just do not recognise the fact that you cannot suddenly get over a
Mm.
disability.
No.
You can't suddenly, um, you know, uh, be go from where the position that you are in right now to be in the position where you are a kind of full-time worker that's going to work 9 to 5 in a physical job. It's not possible.
No, there's a lot of misunderstanding there, and I suppose towards the end of the 90s and the noughties, I felt like things were progressing for disability, but I feel like they always come back the way, or certainly, or certainly standing still. You know, I've never had a proper job, you know, because of my cerebral palsy. You know, I've been to uni, I've been to postgraduate, you know, and eventually I just gave up looking for work. It's just too, there's no obligation on employers to employ disabled people. They're encouraged to make reasonable adjustment, but the bottom line is they don't. They don't have to do anything. They don't have to employ anybody. So they don't. So that's why I'm not working, and I'm doing this.
But David, the thing is, right? Employers are missing out. You know, because they could have you working for them, you're articulate, you're smart, you'd be an asset to their organization. But because they think, well, it's a bit too difficult, you know, they are missing out on that talent. And
Yeah.
it's, you know, actually, if we could get more employers to see that, if we could get them to understand that, then actually the workforce would be there'd be a better breadth. Enhanced, that's the word.
Enhanced. Do you know, I can't remember who was talking to. I think someone on this podcast, but and I'm somebody from a disability organisation, and they were saying that it's so well, it's kind of well documented that there's a massive pool of talent that's unutilized because of this. You know, there's a lot of disabled talent that employers could tap into, but they won't because of the fear and stigma and the discrimination. And so, and to be fair, I don't think any governments have really to tackle that. You know,
Yeah,
and what would take
I
this.
think you're right. I think you know, I think people have kind of governments particularly have kind of put it in the too difficult box. And you know, actually there's a kind of eh, there's a wider issue as well that we don't recognize non-employment contributions.
Yeah,
Right, you know, there's a kind of not a recognition of the fact that actually the contributions that people make, just because they're not getting a salary, doesn't mean that they're not making a massive positive contribution to
yeah.
society. You know, you're doing this, which is ace. I've got I know a load of different people who are maybe not in the kind of traditional workforce, but they're caring or they're volunteering or you know they're just doing things to make other people's lives better, and that's not recognised. That kind of non-earning benefits
Um,
that folk you know. Just by being human and being nice,
yeah.
that folk are able to provide.
I was listening to an argument around debate the other day, and they were talking about how the equality movement is kind of coming backwards. And one of the arguments was that it stemmed from around 2014, but there was a great rise in populism, and yeah, and I kind of like Bush led to Brexit and it led to the election of Trump and yeah, you know, there's been a big surge in population and populism over the last decade, and that's what's uh, pushing the equalities argument backwards. I was quite interested in that argument, you know.
I mean, I think, you know, I think there has been a change in recent years, but actually, so if you look back 100 years ago, more than 100 years ago, in fact, if you were to read The Ragged Trousered Philanthropist that was published more than 100 years ago, they're talking about the Conservatives' policies. And one of the things that the Conservatives had been saying was about how terrible immigration is. And that's 100 years ago. This has always been, there's always been kind of a move by politicians, particularly ones in government or hoping to get into government, to other people to
Yeah,
say, the Conservative government pretty much saying to people, look, your problems are not caused by the Westminster government. Your problems are caused by immigration,
yeah.
right? Because they don't want to take responsibility. They don't want to have to fix things. And if they can try and blame somebody else and convince other people to blame somebody else, then they'll get re-elected. And we know that the problems are not caused by immigration. The cost of living crisis is not caused by immigration.
No. But we spent 6 weeks of election campaign back in the summer when most of the time they were talking about 30,000 migrants.
Yep.
On the most minuscule, I wouldn't say insignificant, but we spent weeks talking about and to say with transition, we spend weeks and weeks talking about a minuscule proportion of the population because the tactic is divide and rule.
Yep. Totally agree with you. Exactly. It's again that othering, that saying your problems are caused by this group. Can it be caused by the government? No, it's caused by this group. And it's nonsense. It's just not true.
Yeah. But do you think the SNP have a bit of trouble at Westminster because they're a bit guilty doing that themselves because they blame everything on Westminster when some of the things that they do is take responsibility. And one of the things that I wanted to come on to is the immigration policy because, much as I don't agree with the Conservatives, kind of draconian measures on immigration. Yeah. And I wonder if you would agree that the SNP's policy is at the other end of the scale, and really encouraging people to come to Scotland, and I think that ties in. I think that ties in with equality moving backwards and a community. I wonder what you thought about that.
So Aberdeen has got the highest proportion of non-UK born people outside London. So London's got the highest, Aberdeen is second in the UK. And actually our city is better for it. We've got, and if you look at Scotland's population as a whole, we've got the most highly educated population in Europe. We're actually doing brilliantly, and actually, if you look at Aberdeen, for example, if you go to the NHS in Aberdeen, right, a whole load of the doctors and nurses and carers were born in other countries. And that's a good thing. It's a good thing that we've got all that. And because actually we don't have enough carers. So where are we going to get people from if people are not coming from other countries? It's not that these jobs are being taken by people from foreign countries that Scottish people could take. There isn't enough folk to fill the roles.
But we do to balance it because, there's still more people like myself in Scotland. They can't get work. And there's a lot of people from overseas, working in hospitals, which is great, but I think it's... and I'm going to tell you a story. I'm going to tell you a story.
Go for it.
But I'm not going to name people. The somebody that I know works in the NHS somewhere in Scotland, and her department paid for somebody to come from Nigeria to take up a position, and they paid this person's visa. They paid this person's flight, and they found them somewhere to live. They got them some groceries when they arrived, push it halfway. And yeah, I've been trying to get into the NHS probably for 20 years. And can understand why people like me find that distasteful.
Oh, totally. And you can say that it is possible to hold both views, right? So it's possible to say, I'm glad that the NHS is doing stuff to get carers in, but also the NHS needs to do more in order to ensure that it's being a kind of, I don't know what the correct word is, a disability positive employer. You can say you can have both views at the same time. Like I mean, thinking about carers, right, and kind of being a carer in the NHS or in a care home, or I've worked as a carer, right? It's not an easy job. It's a
Mm.
really
Mm.
difficult job. I found it's physically demanding.
It's brutal.
It's emotionally demanding, and we're paying carers, the living wage. Exactly. We're not paying them, we're not recognizing the value that they're adding, and that if we want people who are being cared for to be treated with dignity and respect, right, we need to pay carers more. We need to pay them their worth. And because I mean, I'm not sure I would do that job for peanuts anymore. I've done it
Oh
before.
no,
Not sure I would do it.
I think it's a really hard job, and they work really difficult shifts, and they get
Yep.
very low paid. But I think Ryan saying the SNP to spend millions on setting up Social Security Scotland,
Yeah.
and would they not have been better using that money to pay frontline services and social care?
So they have also, so the Scotland was ahead of the UK in that we required adult social care workers to be paid the living wage. So not the minimum wage, but the living wage, right? Now, I still don't think that's enough, but it's still more than they would be paid in the rest of the UK. But the good thing about Social Security Scotland is, I've spoken to hundreds of people that have been claiming PIP, for example, and you speak to them about the difficulties there are in claiming PIP. Now, all of the problems that were raised with me about claiming PIP, about the assessments that there are,
Yeah.
about how you've got to reclaim it every year, even if you've got a kind of terminal condition or a condition that won't get any better. All of the kind of stresses that are associated with claiming PIP. Social Security Scotland was designed alongside with disabled people. Disabled people were in the room talking about how to design
Ah,
it to get rid of some of those problems. So, I think the money that's been spent on Social Security Scotland, because of the reduction in the stress, and it's not perfect, right? But it's a lot better than the previous
yeah,
system.
of course, yeah.
So because of the reduction in the stress that there is on people making claims, I really think that it was worth it.
Yeah, yeah, I can see that. I can see the thing about it. I think I had in Social Security Scotland when I meant Social Care Scotland because I
Oh,
think I'm right.
sorry.
So I think I'm right in saying that Scottish Government are setting up a social care about NHS, which will presumably cost millions to do. And I think that social care money would be far better spent on frontline services.
So yeah, no, sorry, I totally misunderstood there. In terms of the National Care Service,
Yeah,
and
so,
what that looks like, again, there's some issues with the current system, right? So if you live in Aberdeenshire, and you're caring for a relative, let's say, and that relative gets a certain amount of respite care. So Aberdeenshire assesses that there's a certain amount of respite care so that you can get some respite from caring for your relative. Okay, the respite decided by Aberdeenshire might be totally different to the respite hours decided by Aberdeen City. might be totally different to the respite hours decided by Argyll and Bute. You know,
Right.
there's a real postcode lottery depending on
Okay.
where you are. So the National Care Service would get rid of that. It would also ensure the kind of the issues that we'll have with recruiting staff, for example. There'd be much more flexibility between staff, between regions, because they would all have one employer. There would all be one set of standards that everybody would be required to fill in. So you could easily move somebody, if they wanted to, from Dundee to Inverness, because they would have the same qualifications that they would require. So actually, it will cost money, but it will also save a significant amount of money and mean a parity in the level of care that there is.
Now, I can see how it create a more uniform service, but I don't see how it will solve the issue of social care being so low paid and being so short staffed.
It wouldn't solve the issue. I think it'll make it better, but it won't completely solve it. We just don't have enough social care staff in place. One of the good things I think about the National Care Service is that at the moment, local councils have got a lot of their own responsibility in relation to social care. And although that's good because there's local accountability, it's also bad because if you're voting for your local councillors, right, do you vote for your local councillors on the basis of what they've said about the care system? Because most folk don't.
No.
And actually, I think we would see better improvements in the care system if it was kind of that. If local councils were not able to say, well, we're really tight for funding, we've got to keep the schools funded, so we're just going to cut some money for social care. If that was taken away from them or kind of, put to a different level, I think it would stop local authorities. I mean, they're making difficult decisions. All those decisions on funding are difficult.
Yeah, it's
But
getting
I think,
cut all the time.
yeah, because
And
public service cuts all the time.
everything's getting cut.
Yeah,
But the government have announced a big injection of cash to the NHS, which is welcome.
yes.
And I hope that starts making a difference to the NHS.
Yeah, I mean, certainly my local NHS have been involved in an awful lot of improvements, and you hear them talking about efficiencies, and you think that means cuts, doesn't it?
Yeah, of course.
But actually, some of the guys, some of the people that I've spoken to in the NHS, and some of the initiatives they've put in place in Aberdeen have made the system more efficient, but they've also made the system better. So, I will always back efficiencies that mean a better service for anybody that's going to the NHS for any kind of issue.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. The NHS is good despite its faults. I'm really grateful we've got. Excuse me. I'm very grateful we've got the NHS. I just wish that they would employ disabled people like myself.
Yes.
But as I say, I've been trying for 20 years to get into the NHS, and it's just not possible. Which is
So I've spoken to my NHS in Aberdeen about the race equality strategy that they have, because I was concerned about the lack of ethnic minorities at senior levels within the NHS. Because at the bottom, you have a whole load of people that are from different nationalities, different ethnic minorities, but fewer of them as you go up the chain. So actually, I haven't spoken to my local NHS in detail about actually what their strategy is about employing disabled people. So after this, I'll go and get in touch with them and ask them, what is your strategy? What are you doing? What actually are you doing to make changes, to make those reasonable adjustments, and to encourage the NHS locally to get that kind of massive pool of talent that's untapped at the moment?
But yeah, I think the NHS should be encouraged to
Mhm.
to do that, but they don't. I feel like everybody's talking about racial equality, which is great, and everybody's talking about BME inclusion, but when it comes to disabled inclusion, who's bothered? And the thing, another argument they use is that they can't measure. Uh,
Yeah.
the disabled task force, and that's a real good tool for them to not employ the same people, because they'll say, well, if you said to them, how many of the same people do you have working that, and they would say, well, we don't have that information because it's self-disclosure. Some people don't disclose. Some people don't wait to tell the employer. But whereas with other minority groups, they do have that information because, they probably know how many proportion are BME. So
On the BME thing, certainly in NHS Grampian, it's self-disclosure as well. So they ask individuals. I don't know, as I say, I don't know what they do in terms of their surveys for how many disabled staff members they have, but I will go away and ask them. And you're like, although I have previously asked them about race, it doesn't mean that that's my priority. It just means that that's what folk have come to me about. Folk have come to me with those concerns, whereas I've heard fewer or no concerns. Doesn't mean they're not out there. And I can only kind of deal with what's in front of me, but I'll go away and speak to NHS Grampian about that one.
Yeah, that's very interesting. And just on the subject of health, what the last time I wanted to talk about this morning, the story in the news is the assisted suicide bill going through Westminster. Do you think that Keir Starmer has allocated enough parliamentary time to scrutinise that bill effectively?
So it's not really up to Keir Starmer, bizarrely. In the vast majority of bills that go through Parliament, it is up to Keir Starmer and the Labour Chief Whip, and the Labour Leader of the House, who's Lucy Powell just now. So they're the ones that make agreements on how much time should be allocated to things. But this one it's a private member's bill, which means that Kim Leadbitter, who's brought it in, has basically the
sister of Joe Cox. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. So I get on really well with Kim. I play football with her.
Lovely, yeah.
And she's great.
Have her on the show here, yeah.
Oh well, I am once we're through this bill, she'll maybe have more free time, so I'll get her to But because it's a private member's bill, what happens is it gets time on a Friday. And if it gets through the second reading on a Friday, then it will go to committee stage and it will get a kind of time where they'll scrutinise it and go through it line by line. But bizarrely, it's one of these really odd things that it's not in the gift of the government to agree how much time it gets on Friday the 29th. Yeah. But it does need to be properly scrutinised. The key thing from my point of view as a Scottish MP and as the Chief Whip of the SNP is that it does not apply in Scotland. It only applies in England and Wales, and you've got to be resident. You've got to be resident in England and Wales. You've got to be resident there for at least 12 months. You have to be registered by a doctor in England or Wales, and you have to have a diagnosis that says that you're terminally ill and expected to pass away within 6 months. Right. I think I'm totally accurate on that, but the bill only came out last night, so hopefully I'm totally right.
But that's good. It doesn't cover Scotland. But I think last year. Was it last year that it went through the Scottish Parliament and it was defeated in the Scottish for the second time? But I suspect enough time to bring it back again.
Yes, exactly. I mean, this is the kind of thing that will be brought back. And, one of the things that Kim has said in bringing it to Westminster is that it's been more than 10 years since the House of Commons voted on it. Yeah. And therefore, she thinks it's time to rerun it. It's time to have the conversation again and give people the opportunity to have their say again. And that's absolutely her right. She's popped the ballot. Basically, she got her name drawn out of the hat first for private members' bills, and she's decided to put this issue to the House. But again, you're right. I think it'll come back in the Scottish Parliament at some point, just to again test the will of the House, see what people feel, see if it's decided that it's time to make a different decision now.
Personally, I hope it doesn't go through. Personally, I'm not in favour of I think, it's a swiftly to open. And I think I'm right in saying that a lot of the medical profession are opposed to it. I think we should listen to them.
So the specific bill that Kim's put forward is modelled on Oregon, I think, and it would be, if it went through, it would be the strictest assisted suicide regulations and laws that there are anywhere in the world. So it would require the kind of highest level of safeguards and protections in place. Now, I'm certainly not saying that I'm in favour of it. I'm also not saying that I'm against it. I
Okay.
genuinely, yeah, and this is totally ducking out. It's very unusual for me to do this, but I'm so glad I'm not in the Scottish Parliament and having to make this decision because it is so difficult. Yeah, so, but anyone in Scotland, I would encourage them to speak to their MSP about their views,
Yeah.
because it's MSPs that are making the decision for people in Scotland, so I would encourage them to do that.
I had, oh, excuse me, I got something for, I
Got a
got
frog in your throat.
it's something good for a broadcaster. And, but I had Jeremy Balfour on the show talking
Yeah.
about this, and he was great, It just said some really interesting. I think it's really interesting to listen to Jeremy. I think it should be disabled people like him leading a conversation and not with a passive role. And but I think he was saying, and I totally agree with him that it's coming in under the strictest rules at the moment, but inevitably over time it'll become more relaxed. So,
Well, I mean, certainly that's what's happened in Canada.
yeah,
The rules have relaxed from where they were
yeah,
initially. I share a lot of the concerns that people who already feel like they're a burden, will feel forced to choose that. And I think that's horrific. That's absolutely not where we want or need to be. And you're right, I do share your concerns that it would possibly be widened out, but then again, there would need to be a parliamentary vote in order to make that happen.
yeah.
Yeah.
Most of it happens. So, and yeah, I think we're coming to the end of our time being after. I've really enjoyed talking to you today. Thank you so much.
I've enjoyed talking to you as well. You give me a lot to think about, particularly when it comes to some of the employment stuff. And I'll go away and do what I can, as I say. And it's probably not something that has been high enough up my agenda. So I will reprioritize and move that one up and see
Yeah.
what I can do.
Thank you. If it's one thing that I could change that I feel so bad about it, it's not working. I did my degree in Dundee, and then I went on to do my MSc in Manchester. I was in a medical school. And never in my wildest dreams at university would I have thought that I'd ever struggled to get work. And it's been the one thing that held my life back the most, just the sheer inability to earn a living and what, I have raised it in the Scottish Parliament, I've raised it, I've sat on disability committees, I've sponsored people in the NHS about it, and it just never seems to change.
I mean, I suppose one of the key things to remember is it's not your fault, right? If these folk are being prejudiced, or discriminatory, or not recognizing your worth, it's not your fault.
Mm.
You're far more qualified than I am. Like, maybe you should stand for Parliament, eh? You could
Oh,
fix this
hell
stuff.
no. Oh,
No, you don't
no.
fancy it.
No, I'd rather sit on the sidelines and great like this. Yeah, yeah. No. No.
Well, we'll do what we can, right? And like, thank you very much for raising it with me. I'll do my best to try and make changes. I don't have a magic wand. I wish I did,
No,
but I'll
no,
do my best.
no. That's it. Well, thank you very much, and thanks very much for your time again.
It's lovely to speak to you. Thank you so much.
Okay, well.